You've all heard the scripture of the day read twice this morning. I'm not going to do it again, but there will be a test in a couple minutes here. We don't normally use too many of the little books of the Bible back in the back. The 1, 2, and 3 John, the 1st and 2nd Timothy, and so forth. We don't use those all that much, at least. And sometimes when we do use them, we're not exactly sure what we're talking about in there because we don't know exactly who wrote them. For example, today's scripture was written by somebody who called himself the elder. Never used the word John. Someone else decided to add that to it later on. We don't know exactly who he's writing to. There are 3 letters, we think, sent to someone, we assume, and we kind of think maybe they were to people who were not too familiar with Jesus, because they seem like they're almost like an instruction manual. The nature of God, the nature of Jesus, and so forth, how you should behave, things like that, And, we think that it was written around 100 A.D. We don't know for sure what was going on. If it was written to a congregation, we don't know for sure what was going on at that time, because we know persecution existed in some situations, but we don't know if it existed where this was being received or not, because it didn't mention about standing firm in the face of persecution like some others did. We just don't know. So we have to decide to let it stand on its own, which is kind of what we do with all of the Bibles, if you will. We believe that one of the reasons we believe that it was probably written to people who didn't know everything about the gospel was he talks about little children. Like, I am the authoritative figure and you're the little children, and I'm telling you this is what God is like, I'm telling you what Jesus is like, and so forth. Now, here's your test question. There's a hand mic up here if you want to come up and use it. But what we want you to think of right now are 2 of the phrases in there. One is, we need to lay down our lives for our brothers or sisters. The second is, if we have the goods and services of the world and we see people in need and we do not do that, God is not very happy with us. One of the questions we always ask of ourselves when we read scriptures, did that apply just to them 2,000 years ago? Or does it still apply to us today? And it makes a difference in how we act. For example, Jesus was asked twice in the Gospels, what must I do to be saved? And he gave 2 entirely different answers. To one person who asked the question, he said, you must be born again. And then he had to explain what in the world that meant, because this guy was thinking of a second physical birth of some kind. To the other person, he said, you must keep all the commandments. I've done all that since I was a little kid, he says. Well, then the only thing you're lacking is to sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then come follow me. Now, we have decided as Christians that only one of those applies to us. If you've ever seen the cartoon of the guy being baptized and he's holding his wallet up over his head, you realize there's a phrase, he didn't want his wallet baptized. Giving up what you have is something different. So that doesn't apply to us. Born again, that's okay. We can all do that. So we sometimes have to think, are we taking the easy way out by thinking that something applied to them only, but not to us now? So here's your question. If you want to shout out your answer or your belief, and it may be belief, is it still our call to lay down our lives for one another? Yes. Okay, I'm going to hear a lot of yeses there. We're going to spend some time talking about what that might mean. Is it your belief that we are somehow judged, I don't know how harshly, somehow judged, maybe being devoid of the love of God a little bit somehow, and that's kind of hard to say that, because we all believe that you really can't outrun the love of God. But somehow something bad is inherent in us if we do not share our goods with those who are in need. Does that still apply to us or not, or is that just then? So I heard something, but my hearing aids are not in. What did you say? Yes. So they both apply to us. Okay. I do not have to convince anyone of that then, right? We're all bought into that basic premise there. And we'll see if it works as we continue on. The Mission Center president, called stake president at the time, but Mission Center president in Independence years ago, when I still lived in Independence, shared in a sermon that he would have people come into his office throughout the year saying, I've just gathered to Zion, Brother MacArthur, and just want you to know I'm here to help out if anything's needed. I said, well, we always can use some help here. What do you have in mind? Well, if you need somebody to preach, and he said, brother, we do not need any more preachers in Independence. However, if you really want to do some things, here's some things to do, and he'd list some things like visiting and things like that. And like the rich young ruler, they would go away sorrowful. I want to talk, I don't want to do. The Loveland congregation, of which I was a part some years ago, was involved in a summer enrichment program. It was part of the interparish ministry program, of which I was a board member, and so the summer enrichment program was designed to help kids whose educational skills would suffer during the summer. They get out of school in May, go back in September. They don't do anything to help enrich their minds, so to speak. So part of the program was called DEAR, drop everything and read. And so every so often somebody said, DEAR, and they would grab a book and read 1 or 2 pages. It was a fun game. Maybe some math things. They had field trips and so forth. My job one summer was to deliver meals to them. There were 3 locations, one in Newtown, 2 in Loveland. And so I would go over late morning to this little Methodist church in Batavia, Ohio, where the women of the church there were making delicious meals for everyone, of 1 slice of bologna, 1 slice of cheese on white bread, and maybe a plum or something like that, And I would then deliver them. They'd load them in coffins. They called them igloo coolers, but let me tell you could have got a body in there. They were that big. So I'd load these 3 coffins in the van that I provided, and I would take them to these locations. I'd drop them off, only with the adults present. When if I couldn't leave them there if the adults weren't there. So this one day I got to the subsidized housing area in Loveland, and the adults were all in a meeting someplace. And I had to wait. Well, there were 30 or 40 kids waiting there. Probably in several cases, this would be the only meal they got that day. And I've already described what was in it. So they weren't getting all that much, but it may be all they got that day. And while I was waiting with the 3rd coffin in the van, I noticed there's some kids over here throwing rocks and sticks and everything, and a kid over here. And I think, well, I'm the adult here. I got to go over and make peace. I walk over there and I give them my best little talk about how to behave and so forth. And while I was doing that, a bunch of kids over here would start flinging rocks and sticks at the same kid. I thought at one point, what did he do to deserve all that? Well, I found out later on he's a pain in the neck, but that's, it doesn't necessarily mean that you still throw things. So I'd go back and forth there until the adults came. What should I have done? Since obviously what I was doing did not keep the rocks and sticks from being flung. What should I have done? What do you think? What's that?
Feed them from the last cooler.
Feed them from the last cooler. So feed them before the adults got there. Since they were on a dirt field, we had to have a tarp put down. What's another thing I might have done? Engagement and activity. Okay. What else? Gone to the kid. Okay. I've told this story probably 3 or 4 times. Someone in the audience has always said what Rachel said. It never occurred to me. I don't know how thick my head was. It never occurred to me. But what does it do when I go over there? I'm the subject, possibly, of the rocks and sticks. And most of us don't want to be the subject of the rocks or sticks, at least. The question about that is, where do I stand? And there are various places to stand in that particular scenario, but only one would work, and I never even thought of it. Talk about a kid. Every kid in the kids group I talked to about that, they knew what I should have done. I was probably 50 years old, and I didn't know what I should do. That's the story of my life. Anyway, on to some examples here. Wendell Meddy was a pastor in Loveland of a small congregation. He decided to go on a mission trip to Nicaragua. And when he got there, he was just devastated by the poverty, by all of the terrible things going on. Not just poverty, but sometimes government-inflicted poverty and things like that. And he decided he was going to do something about it. When he got back to Loveland, the church rented a small warehouse. When I say small warehouse, probably maybe the size of this sanctuary floor. And he became repurposing things. He had this knack of finding things that no one wanted to use and repurposing them. And they would have a church service every Sunday morning, last for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then they'll go to the warehouse and they would pack things into boxes that could be used to ship. Now, many of those people in that group would take trips to Nicaragua with all the suitcases they were allowed to take, full of stuff to give away. Their slogan now is from suitcases to shipping containers, because today they ship an average of 4 to 5 40-foot containers every day from there to other places in the world. They're one of the 100 largest nonprofits in the country now, started in Loveland, calling themselves the Matthew 25 Ministries. Inasmuch as you've done unto the least of these, my children, you have done it unto me, Jesus says in Matthew 25, and that was their belief. The Loveland congregation would have some meeting every month with some place, might be a soup kitchen sometime. And we went to Matthew 25 once or twice. And my job was, in that one day, to take these mailers that you get with coupons attached to them, open the container, open the coupon thing. It'd be like one free shampoo or one free toothpaste, something like that, that the manufacturers had no longer needed. I would take the glue off of that, place the coupon in one location, the other stuff in a recycle bin, and that's what I did. I was making little balls of glue about that big from all this stuff and everything. Now, to do something like that and think you're making a difference in the world, you have to believe, of course, that you're making a small difference in there. I had to find out what happens to this. Well, somebody is going to take all those coupons, they're going to go redeem them either for free products or half-price products or something like that. They're going to bring it back here, and someone else is going to take them and pack them up, and we're going to have emergency packs for people. If you want to see where someone might have been sent, the tornadoes that hit Logan County, just a few miles from here, they had a truck on the way almost before the tornado left, because they do that kind of stuff. They know how to react to disasters. They're like the American Red Cross, but they're quicker, if anything. And so they see a hurricane coming. Next thing you know, they've got 2 or 3 trailer loads of bottled water on the way there or something like that. They know that kind of stuff at least. Now, just to put this in perspective, when Matthew 25 Ministry started, they were about half the size of this congregation. So never assume that you're too little to do something. Dean, a neighbor of mine from 2 doors up the street who now lives in Utah, also went to Nicaragua. And he became appalled at the difficulty of getting water to places there. And he decided that he would, and he developed a solar, they had no electricity there, he developed a solar-fueled water pump. When I was communicating with him last week and told him I was going to mention him in my sermon this following Sunday, he sent me 3 pictures of videos that he'd done down there. It's all on his own. If people give him money, he uses it, his own money. He travels down there as often as he can afford to do so and distributes these things to where they can get water out of a well when they have no electricity, and they got to draw a rope up maybe 40 or 50 feet to the water. The solar panel is about the size of a furnace filter. And PVC pipe and things down there, you know. And he decided that's what he wants to do to help out. Because water, the thing we take for granted, the thing that curses his congregation because of what's been the bills you got to pay to have water here. These people down there, water is a daily need that they can't sometimes get. Third example, Tobias Brewer. He's 7 or 8 years old. He lives down in the Pleasant Valley area of Ohio. He's going to be baptized in June. And he believes that as part of his baptism, he should give something back. So he wants to raise enough money to have a water well dug in some country where they have that need, which is a lot of countries at least. Through Outreach International, he needs $6,500 to do it. I saw his video on Facebook. I was going to say YouTube, on Facebook the other day, because I heard about him last Sunday in a church in Middletown. He's the grandson of Brenda Strickland, some of you might know at least. Anyway, he wants to raise $6,500. And next Saturday, they're having a fundraising thing. If you have any desire to spend some money and feel good about it, you can, if you want to check out Sammy Brewer on Facebook. That's his mother, Sammy. And then you can make a donation there. 3 different examples, all of them dealing with water one way or the other. But anyway, the needs that we had probably back in the days when 1 John was being written, in all likelihood, were food, shelter, and maybe jobs. A couple thousand years later, we still have those same needs to some degree, plus we got others. They didn't have it that they had some environmental issues at the time, but nobody thought about that. But what about the environment? What about peace and justice? What about real equality? When I say real equality, not conditioned to make people semi-equal. Global warming, which comes under the environmental umbrella, if you will. Now, there are some who believe that will never be an issue because Jesus will come prior to that happening, and so we will not have to worry about that. Maybe. All I can tell you is everyone who's predicted that has been wrong for 1,994 years and about 15 minutes. Because it hasn't come to pass yet. What if it takes another 1,994 years before it happens? Ohio will be a beach city, something like that, if nothing is done. Now we're getting into some toe trading here a little bit about, about who is our brother or sister and who do we lay down our lives for. Our temptation is always to do the soft giving. When I say soft giving, I'm on the board of a food pantry in Loveland. I've been there since its inception. And it is very easy to go to the store and buy 8 or 10 cans of something. Not green beans or corn. We've discovered that we got that coming out our ears all the time. But 8 or 10 cans of something, take it in there and say, great, I've done a good thing. And you have. I don't want to speak down to that at all. But that's soft giving. Sometimes the giving involves the danger of rocks and sticks or ridicule. And sometimes the only way we can lay down our life is to endanger our life a little bit at least. The same organization I was talking about had a gathering in Charleston, South Carolina, and part of the training that we were going through had to do with community enrichment. And so a lot of us took a tour bus through South Charleston, an unincorporated area that no one wants to incorporate with because it's got huge needs and nobody wants to take that on the rolls. The tour bus was guided by the preacher. That's the name he gave us. I'm the preacher. None of us wanted to get off, I don't believe. I know I sure didn't, at least, because we were going through this area where the bus could barely get through the street. And he was telling us all of the things that needed to be done down there. He himself was doing a lot of repurposing. He had this network he's developing where farmers who had extra something or other would donate it. So maybe one week he's got a truckload of green beans to be given down there. Another week he's got a truckload of watermelons. Another week he's got a truckload of apples, depending on what's available. And people gather to do that. But it's also a drug-infested area. And he said, we got to do something about that. Because Sunday was the big day for people to drive in from more affluent areas to get their supply of drugs, or the drugs were going to be sold somewhere place else at least. So this congregation decided, and they went along with it, that they were going to have outdoor services every Sunday at the place where the drug dealers convened. And he said, first Sunday you get down there, you got these Cadillacs and these Lexuses and things like that rolling in and kind of driving around a circle and then leaving again. And we'd meet on that street corner for a few weeks until they've regrouped, and then we moved to some other corner. They keep moving back and forth. Now, you all know that when you start messing around with people whose livelihood is drugs, they may not take kindly to it. And so far, they had not thrown any rocks or sticks, but there was that possibility, if you will. If you're like me, you wouldn't want to get off the bus in a place like that. Sometimes where we stand requires us to get off the bus. Just saying. Missy already talked about Doctrine and Covenants 163. I also have chosen to close with that particular section. It goes this way. Humankind must awaken from its illusion of independence. It must awaken from unconstrained consumption without lasting consequences. We are called to prepare new generations of disciples to bring fresh vision to bear on the perplexing problems of poverty. There are too many P's in there. Perplexing problems of poverty, disease, war, and environmental deterioration. In 1868, a man wrote a poem called Hark the Voice of Jesus Calling. Some of you older people, I'm not naming names or pointing fingers here, some of your older people may recall that has been in our hymnal, 3 verses of it, for 75 years, or is in the current one too. Had 4 verses, referred to a lot about the heathen in it, and so I'm assuming it was written to convert the heathen to Christianity. With the dropping of one of one verse, and other churches seem to have dropped that same verse. I can't recall what it was now. It goes like this, and you realize that it's a call that is not specified to individuals to convert to Christianity to so much as a call to invite Christians to be Christians. Hark the voice of Jesus calling, who will go to work today? Fields are ripe and harvest waiting. Who will bear the sheaves away? Earnestly the master calls. Rich reward he offers free. Who will answer gladly saying, here am I, O Lord, send me. If you cannot cross the ocean and the distant lands explore, you can find the needy nearer. You can help them at your door. If you cannot give your thousands, you can serve with willing might, and whatever you do for Jesus will be precious in his sight. Let none hear you idly saying, there is nothing I can do, when the souls of people are dying and the Master calls for you. Take the task he gives you gladly. Let his work your pleasure be. Answer quickly when he calls you, here am I, O Lord, send me. Amen.